and you're buying and you need to sell, and you're having a tough time in the marketplace about competing with other people that perhaps don't have a house to sell, you really have to pull up your bootstraps and look for ways in which the seller will gravitate toward you.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Mortgages Made Easy podcast. Again, joined by one of my favorite realtors on the planet, MJ Agostini. MJ is with Remax out of Connecticut, and she is one of my favorite realtors on the planet. MJ and I were talking about what you would need to know if you're a move-up home buyer. You own your home today, and you want to buy your next home. How does that look? And this is almost like one of those how-to books or move up home buyer for dummies kind of a thing. We're going to give you the information you need to know so you can properly stage your process. You can involve the right professionals at the right stages. So MJ, let's start with the big picture. Why are people even thinking about selling their home and buying other homes right now?
Thank you, Dave, for having me on the podcast. This is one of my favorite podcasts, and I enjoy the conversation. And it's very vital and important information that we are trying to give our clients, and this is a great venue to do that. So, why do people want to move up? There's a variety of reasons, and we're seeing a lot of demand for move up buyers right now, mainly because so many people bought during COVID and they bought homes that may have not, they weren't really thinking about the future. They were just trying to get into a property, whether they were relocating from another area or within their same area, but needed to find a more permanent type housing solution. So you have a lot of buyers right now in homes that just don't fit them. Be it that they've had additional children, perhaps have multi-generational, maybe grandmother, grandfather, another relative coming to live with them, or maybe just their physical characteristics of the house just don't work anymore for them. They need a big kitchen where they have a small kitchen now, or they need a formal dining room because they're doing a lot of dining and they only had an eat-in kitchen. So that really is one of the big things are people that got locked into houses during COVID. The there is also another set of buyers that want to move up because they thought about looking for their dream house, their eventual house that they would stay in forever, and that they were looking for that pinnacle, and so we're trying to manage a lot of these people to move from what they currently have into their so-called dream house.
Hmm. And just to round that out for a minute, let's just talk about there are many people who are maybe in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And even though we're calling this move up, but a lot of people who are in the other end of the spectrum, they've been in their house for 20 years, 30 years, they raised their families, and now they're trying to downsize, but the characteristics are pretty much the same, aren't they?
Well, yeah, moving up or moving down, you're making a lifestyle change, you're making a change in overall square footage, you're making a change in characteristics of your house. So both the move up buyer and the move down buyer do face a lot of the same issues, and they look to us obviously to try to solve their financial strategy or put together a financial strategy and then look to us to find solutions for their housing needs.
Hmm, interesting. So I guess the question really starts with um, where do you start? And I'm thinking that you start by understanding where you are, right? Before you talk about what you want to buy. if you own your property today, I would think that the move-up buyer or the transitional buyer, let's call it that, must understand their current home. So how do you figure out what a home is worth?
Well, that's a good question. You know, with all these online portals, most people just gravitate toward an online figure that's very static, that doesn't have really any good meat or characteristics, meaty characteristics of your home, and doesn't really give you a true value. I mean, certainly consumers can start there and see what the public thinks of their home, but really you have to drill down and bring in a realtor who's proficient in your neighborhood, in your location, in your county, who does a lot of business with boots on the ground, because they can really drill down to the point where they're going to give you a number that you can actually take to the bank. Because
Hmm.
a lot of we're finding Zillow or Redfin or any of the online portals can be as much as 10%, higher or lower of what the actual sales price goes. So they
So if Zillow says your house is worth 500, it could really mean it's worth 450, maybe even less, or it could be
easily,
550 or maybe even more. And
right.
like I wouldn't bet my future happiness on some random number generated by Zillow without even knowing the specifics of the house.
Yeah, exactly. And Zillow doesn't have all the characteristics, and there we encourage clients to go on to Zillow to help improve their profile so that when consumers come to look at their house, they see a robust number with all of the information that your house has. But truly, the agent's going to give you a strategy, a blueprint to get from selling your house to buying your house, and giving you numbers you can realistically count on. There's always a time when you might be off for whatever reason. There could be something that develops in the transaction or the physical characteristics of the property, like maybe a bad septic system or something wrong with your well. But for the most part, the realtor is going to give you solid information on what they think the house will sell for, based on the current market, and what they feel that you would have to buy to achieve your goals for the next property, whether it's going up or going down.
And you've mentioned the word market a couple of times, and let's get focused in on that because I had a conversation earlier today from a woman who's in a particular market in New Jersey. And as we were talking, she mentioned another town that's probably 5 miles away from the town that she's in, that and the market's entirely different. And so, as they say, it's all location, location, location. When you're dealing with a particular home, there's two elements. What is it worth in the current market? What's it worth today? And then also, what's this house going to be worth if I have to sell it? Because in most cases, once you've started down this process, you may find a home and then the timing becomes critical.
Yeah, it's really a blueprint. Your realtor, along with your mortgage professional, team up to really give you a blueprint of how to get to point A to point B. And that is correct. Markets, even one town over, can be extremely strong, where another town next door could be higher in inventory, not getting over asking price for properties. That could be a lot more availability in one town versus another. So from town to town, even though you're in the same state, you could have huge swings of value. And you really have to know your financial capabilities and combine that with your strategies of trying to purchase a home, because it's still very competitive here in the Northeast. New York, New Jersey, and the Northeast, we're still pretty competitive. We still have lots of buyers looking for a small amount of houses, so there's still competitiveness. You have to craft offers that are financially make sense to you, but are aggressive enough to secure a property. And that's why perhaps using your lender to discover, okay, can we take some money out of 401k? Can we do a bridge loan? Can we do a HELOC on the current house? All those factors need to be planned out ahead of time so that when you do find the house of your dreams, that you can execute whether you've sold your house or not yet.
Hmm. That's so true. And then, you know, the next part of this is really, really critical. And it's a conversation I've had a lot. I'm sure you've had a lot. But the question is, do you buy first or do you sell first? And I know that, you know, year to year we change our answers. Sometimes I tell people that I could have two conversations in 5 minutes, and I'll tell one buyer something, and then I'll tell the next buyer something exactly opposite. And it
Right.
really just depends on their personal characteristics. But let's talk generally. What do you recommend today? Are you going to recommend that they buy first or they sell first?
Well, again, you default to what is their current situation. Are they a family of four and have pets and try to sell their house, don't have a place to go yet? Do they have a plan B or a temporary housing so that they can sell their house, get their cash, know what they have for cash, go to temporary housing, and then find their dream home? Or do they have the financial ability to be able to find their dream home first, move in, and then sell their old house? So there's a lot of factors. There are clients of ours that are maybe just a couple or a single person, and they're like they can go live with the parents. They have friends that they can live with. We have clients right now that are going to be selling. They're getting divorced, but they asked me, should we what should we do? Should we sell first or should we buy first? And in their position, they really didn't have the funds to be able to buy without selling. So they're each going to rentals and then delivering the house to us. We're going to sell the house, close on the house, give them their cash, and then go out and find a new property. So for
Mm,
them, that was the strategy that will work because the husband kept trying to find houses without selling his house, and not many people, if any, are going to take a contingency sale.
yeah. On the other hand, for many, many people, especially in the market as tight as the one we've had in recent years, I pull out all stops to try to find a way to let them buy first. You try to time everything, but sometimes you talked about a family with multi-generational family, parents and grandparents, parents and children, whatever the structure. But sometimes they need to know where they're going, and that creates the motivation. And there's every flavor in between. So let's talk a little bit about financing, and I'll take the lead on this a little bit, and just talk about the fact you hinted at it just a moment ago, but when you're buying your next home, it's really about the numbers. And so let's talk at the top about how someone gets approved for a mortgage. And it really is incredibly simple. It's uh, we look at three major tests. Test number one, do you make enough money? So it may be, do you make enough money to afford the new house, or it may be, do you make enough money to afford both homes? But the first question is, do you make enough money? We'll come back to that in a minute when we'll talk about carrying the two homes or how you deal with that. The second question is, do you have enough money? So let's say, for example, you have somebody who is buying a home and they may need 5% down, 10% down, they may need 30% down. But do they have the money in hard cash, or can they accumulate the money? Is there someone who'll give them a gift? Is there, but let's talk about that same $500,000 house. If you're buying a $500,000 house, and let's say you could get approved for 5% down, you have the income to carry it, you still need 5% down on $500,000 house, that's $25,000. You may have $20,000 in closing costs between the closing costs, the escrows, and blah, blah, blah. Some money for moving expenses. So they may need $50,000 or more. For some people, that's chump change. For other people, that may be insurmountable. So test number one, do you make enough money? Test number two, do you have enough money? And the test number three is, how's your credit? And I always recommend that early in the process, if you're going to buy anything, even if you're going to buy in 3 months, 6 months, or 3 years, start monitoring your credit early on. It's something we can do for you. These days, we even have the ability to do what's called a soft credit pull. So it doesn't go on your credit record that we've run your credit, but it gives us the baseline information, sort of like going to a doctor and getting a baseline pulse or
Right.
whatever. So you have the baseline. Now then we can come up with a plan. But those are the three things. Do you have enough money? Do you make enough money? And how's your credit? And then once we've got that, now in the situation of somebody who's transitioning, move up, move down, whatever, there may be equity in the current home that we could put to use. And there are other strategies that we can talk about because, like you said, you mentioned it earlier, if the house is not on the market today, well, they may be able to do an equity line if they have enough equity in the house. And then that's a great way of getting money for the down payment, assuming they can afford the payments. There are bridge loans, and some of the bridge loan options disregard the payments on your current home, and therefore you only really have to qualify carrying one home. Of course, like anything else, whenever you have a benefit, there's a sneaky cost
The
somewhere that you
downside.
have to,
Yeah.
yeah. But there are equity loans, there are bridge loans, there's money from family, but that's how you get the money together. And then we look towards getting you qualified.
401k money too. We have a lot of
401k, yeah.
people tapping into 401ks. And we have clients right now tapping into 401ks to be able to get them over the hurdle. And then, there's certain 401ks, if you put the money back quickly, you don't have a penalty. Others you do, but there's some you can borrow against your 401k. So there's all types of additional sources that you can try to
Mhm.
extract.
Great. And then, well, you're on the seller side and the buyer side. Would you ever talk to a home buyer that is not pre-approved if they're not a cash buyer?
Well, this is the conversation we usually have. When we first talk with a buyer, we get a referral or a phone call in, we ask two questions. Are you currently engaged with a realtor? And have you secured your financing? And because number one, we don't want to step on any other agent's toes because they maybe already have a relationship and they're just calling for information. And then number two, we want to make sure that they are appropriately financed for what they're looking for. I think it benefits them more so than us because they need to know what they can afford to borrow and how much and what does that translate into a purchase price. And for them, that takes anxiety out of the process because if you don't know how much you can spend, or you don't know what your payments are going to be, or you don't know how much HOA that you can handle, then you're kind of, looking in the dark, so to speak. So
Hmm.
having, engaging with a realtor to be your trusty guide, and engaging with your loan officer to make sure that you're financially ready to go are really the two ingredients to get you out the door looking at property.
Hmm. Okay. Um, and we've touched on this, but if you have equity in your home, there's some strategies for tapping into that equity. And the specifics will really depend on how much equity you have, what your plans are. So I don't want to go through the same conversation we've had, but I did want to raise the topic. When you look at the buckets of money that you have, as you just pointed out, there, generally speaking, there's the savings bucket. There's the 401k retirement fund bucket that you may be able to tap into. And then there's uh, there's the Santa Claus bucket, right? There's the bucket of people who love you and will give you a gift. And finally, there's the bucket, and it's often the largest bucket of the equity in your current home. And so any strategic analysis of whether or not you can buy or how you can do this really has to address the buckets and what it takes to get you approved for that next move. It would be that's what makes this all so much fun and so complicated, because you really have to run this with military precision. You have to get a you have to have a plan for listing your home. You have to have a plan for carrying the two homes. You have to have a plan for buying the next home, and it has to be done with precision. And you have to have a contingency plan. You were just telling me a few moments ago before we got on the air about a transaction that you were involved with earlier this morning where there was water damage and all of a sudden the house didn't sell. Well, if you're the move up buyer and you have something that goes berserk at the last minute, but you're in a contract that you have to close, you better have a way of addressing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There, with any type of action, you have to have a plan B and a plan C, because the real estate market and the transactions are just, they're not static transactions. They tend to be very elastic. They move because of changes that may happen, whether it be on the seller side, on the buyer side, on the property side, on the lender side, on insurance side. There's so many people, lawyer sides, there's so many people that touch that transaction and are can affect or be affected by the transaction. So you really you have to be looking around at all times. It's kind of like defensive driving, right? You go down 95 and you're always looking at who's driving around you, and if you have to pull over, where are you going to pull over? So that's kind of its defensive buying and mortgage lending, really.
Hmm. So, that's a great um, lead into our next topic, which is contingencies. And, there are contingencies on both sides. So, um, if let's say you need to sell your home before you buy, and can you make your sale contingent on finding another property? Sometimes you can do a sale. And I remember in a conversation we had maybe 6 months ago, you told me about how you engineered some contracts of sale to have a very long lead time until closing. And that's an amazing strategy. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about contingencies on the sell side and contingencies on the buy side.
Okay, so when you're selling and you're buying and you need to sell, and you're having a tough time in the marketplace about competing with other people that perhaps don't have a house to sell, you really have to pull up your bootstraps and look for ways in which the seller will gravitate toward you. What is it about your offer that's enticing? And many times it's the agent's responsibility, as well as doing their due diligence, find out what's going on with that seller. Is the seller building a house? Do they need time? In this instance, the seller was building a house and they needed the time, and they were understood that the agent gave them all the information. We gave them all the information on that sale of the house and where it was and what we were going to list it for. and that we gave them their RCMAs. We showed them what the equity
And
was,
what a CMA is
a comparative market evaluation showing that what we were listing it for was exactly what the marketplace would pay for it, so that there's no fooling around. The house would definitely get sold. So in this case, time was what the seller wanted, and the seller had other offers that were competitive to this offer, but they weren't giving them the time. And the time to many people is just as important commodity as the money is, because there was no way they were moving into their new house. They didn't have a plan B. They had to go from one house to the next, and they had kids and dogs and storage, and it just wouldn't have worked. So our deal worked because we gave them time, and that allowed us time to sell the property and close when they wanted us to close.
and that's a great point. And I really think that highlights where a great realtor like MJ comes in, because it is a fallacy to assume that every seller in the market, every buyer in the market is the same. And it takes an artist, it takes somebody with years of experience and sensitivity and the ability to draw information out of people to be able to plumb that and to get down to the bottom. Because we've both, over the years that we've been in business, have stories of a seller who fell in love with a buyer and bent over backwards to make it happen, or a buyer who won the bid because, as you said, they were willing to give the seller an extra month or 2 months or 3 months so that the seller could do what they needed. And hell, I remember one case where one of my buyers let the seller stay in the house rent-free for a month. And that made all the difference. That made all the difference. So working with great realtors is a key element in the success, because especially when you're doing this kind of transition, whether it be move up or move down, having somebody with the credibility, having somebody with the integrity, and it just will make a huge difference. Um, what about uh, coordination? How do you coordinate all of this? You're buying, you're selling, you got to move. Tell us a couple of war stories.
Oh, well, we just had a situation where we had a gentleman in his house for 52 years. He was an artist. He had studios full of artwork. He had a son who got divorced, who was living at home with him. And he was 91 and simply ran out of money and needed to sell quickly. But had no, his neither him or his son had any money to go into the new places. And we had all this artwork that needed to be moved. So what we really sat down with them and created a blueprint of what we needed to do. And we called ourselves the Monday Night Supper Club. We met with this family every Monday night from March until we closed in July. And
Mhm.
we updated our roadmap every Monday. The family served us dinner, and we worked out. There was always a problem that needed to be worked out, and every Monday we did have a problem, and we solved it. And we worked our way right up until the time that we did closing, and we too had to craft it so that we had to find a rental for the son. We had to find assisted living for the father. We had to find storage for all the paintings and sculptures. We had to find movers that would move without getting paid till the closing. We had to find estate sale people that would work. I mean, it just went down the line. Cleaning people, anything that you can imagine. We just pulled all of our contacts, our resources, and I'm not going to say like magic it all happened, but we worked really hard, and we were able to put all the pieces together, and we had a roadmap, and we were successful, and we closed. So it's really about having a specific written plan, just like a business plan for a company. You have to have, for each deal we do, we write a plan. And we try to follow that plan. And of course, we have contingency plans, but if you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going.
And so you adjust to it. But that's great. So really what you're saying is that there's going to be that, especially when you're doing a buy and a sell, there's there's the sell side, and there's a whole set of logistics about selling a home. There's a buy side, there's a whole set of logistics about buying a home. There's a finance side, which, has its own challenges. And then on top of that, it's a move. You're moving people from one place to the other. And that has, and having the right plan means that, yeah, things are going to change and there's going to be adjustments along the way, but you're going to be in a position of stability and not chaos. Um, what happens when, let's say, the house that you are buying needs some renovation or repairs? How does that jump into the picture?
Well, it depends on how you're structuring your deal. If it's major renovations that you need to do, you may talk to your lender about closing and then turning around and getting a rehabilitation loan on to be able to take care of furnaces or roofs or windows, or and so that's post closing, or you may talk to your lender about doing a rehab or a rehabilitation loan ahead of time, and that money allows you to purchase and then have the as it monies to be able to do the renovations after you close. So
Hmm.
those are two strategies if you have a house that needs some work. So don't be afraid of that. And actually, those houses are the ones that most people are least likely to buy because they pose extra challenges. You have vendors you have to secure. You have to have a lot of patience, and there's inconvenience. So I really see that that's an opportunity for buyers who may not be able to compete on other levels. You may be able to secure a really nice home that needs a little bit of work, but with that extra type of financing, you're able to make that happen.
Let's talk about team. We've spoken about this in the past, but I'm a big fan of assembling a winning team. Who who goes on that team? Who are the members that you need on a team to make something like this happen?
Well, I think in any transaction, obviously you're starting with your financial people, your lender, you have Dave on board, and then from there it springboards into any type of vendors, your plumbers, your electricians, your contractors. If you're selling, you want estate sale people, cleaning people, movers. You need to have those team members ready. When you're buying, besides having your lender and your vendors available, you have to think about purchasing furniture, getting yourself squared away with internet and electricity and any type of security systems for the house. All those require people and companies, and your realtor and lenders, usually we deal with these people on every transaction in some facet, and they're available for the buyers and sellers to be able to utilize. And that's a nice thing, because I don't know about you, but when I try to find somebody to do pavers for my driveway, cut my grass, wash my windows, I don't want to go through the whole litany of finding somebody online, right? I want to just say, Dave, who do you know that's a great landscaper? Who do you know that does pavers? And we're usually there with all of those names and numbers, and the client feels comfortable because those vendors are already vetted out. They don't have to do
Hmm.
all that work to try to figure out who to use.
And of course, it goes. I guess you sort of glossed over this, but the upfront team. You're If you're buying or selling in Connecticut, you need an attorney. You need
Okay. Yeah.
you need an attorney.
Home
Uh,
inspector.
if you're buying or selling, you need the right home insurance people, or however you're going to do your home insurance. There's a property inspector on the property you're purchasing. And so I love having a conversation with the buyer up front and say, okay, who's your realtor going to be? Great, you know that what people don't know, and you could get a realtor like MJ and pay her the exact same thing that you would pay a realtor who's just printed her license yesterday.
Yes.
And so, you know, the key in my mind to making something as complex as this move up buy or transitional buy happen is to have a great realtor, to have a great attorney, to have a home inspector on call so that when you find the house, the home inspector is ready, to have had a conversation with your financial team, your accountant, your financial planner, to have all of those people ready on almost on standby. So when you push the button, it almost happens like magic. But it's not an accident
Yeah.
because you've planned for it. You've had you hired, you identified the right realtor up front. And you know, frankly, you may be selling in Connecticut and buying in North Carolina,
Mhm.
and whether it be MJ knowing somebody in North Carolina or I knowing somebody in North Carolina, but networking into the team so that it's seamless and then the communication is seamless is huge. Let just let's just bring it to a close. We've planned it all. How do you know it all? How do you know it's a success?
Uh, well, it's a success when the goals have been met. And it's the end of the day. The buyers have bought, the sellers have sold. They've moved on, moved up, moved down, moved in with parents, moved out with parents. When you've come to the end of your plan, because at the end of your plan, what does it say? It says, congratulations, you know, on your new home, or congratulations for selling your old home. So we love to say hello to the buyers and we love to say goodbye to our sellers. And, you know, that's when we know it's worked, when all the hard work, all the planning, everything comes to the pinnacle and everybody walks away. It's kind of bittersweet because you've been with these people for sometimes maybe even 6 months. And, you know, sometimes you talk to them once or twice a day more than your regular family. And now all of a sudden you say your goodbyes. You know, it's not goodbye forever. You still stay in touch with them, but not like you have been for the past 6 months. So
Mm.
that's when you know that you've succeeded. You've come to the end of your plan, and everything at the end of your plan meets what actually happened in reality.
Thank you so much, MJ. Thanks for taking the time. I hope that everyone who's listening to this has found this educational. If you liked it, really, I appreciate your liking it, checking us off and subscribing, and sharing it with your friends who are thinking about moving, because
And
we're trying
comment.
to,
And
yeah,
don't forget
and
to
comment.
comment
And
below.
we're trying to do this to help our clients, we're help it to help you get this done in the best possible way. So thank you.
Thank you.